Toda for Yahshua. Shalom, shalom, Yisrael. Yohanathan Da, we with you here, humbly soul, on what they call the 13th of June, 2021. Thank you to Shua players, for there ain't nothing I can do without Yahweh on my side. Torah portion number 34, in the wilderness, Bemidbar, in the wilderness. Here in this, now we are in a new book. And we're really fast forwarding. We only got like 20 more to go. And I want you to really appreciate what you got here, because I'm not going to do these anymore. Once this is over, this is done, because I want you to connect this to what you're going to, what's next, which is Daniel, Revelations, and all the fun stuff you like. But just like when you buy a house, you love the way it looks when you get it all done up, but it has to, in the beginning, it's ugly. It has to be dug up in the ground, and you have the plumbing and the wiring. All that stuff is not fancy and pretty. What you like is what you see when you get in, and the furnishings and the walls and all that. But you have to get the structure right. And that's what you're getting here. And if you cannot study these so-called boring books, especially we just came out of Wayik or Leviticus, and connect it to Yahweh Shua, then that shows the level of the maturity that where we are in. As Hebrews, learning who we are. Because everything in here, like the psalmist said in Psalm 47, the scroll of book is all about him. It's all about Yahweh Shua. And he was talking about the Torah, the first 5 books. In Bemidbar, here we have Israel's wanderings in the wilderness, which is the name, the true name of this book. The book is, and the true name is not Numbers, it's Bemidbar. And it happens between 1450 to 1410 BC. And here we see that Yisrael is numbered twice, in the first chapter and the 26th chapter. The first part of this narrative concludes the separation lessons and experiences we got at Sinai, pointing back to the Exodus. Then the major portion of this book recounts the years of wandering until, as a new generation, we reached Jordan River. So we talked last week, going through Bekukatai, how practicing these instructions and learning them is not to make us perfect. We know how the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Not when it comes to the Torah. Practice makes understanding and discernment. And the more we read these things and study them and practice them, the more we have understanding of what is pointing to your Redeemer. Let me go to start off with Matthew 19:20. And this Torah portion, it goes from Numbers 1:1 through Numbers 4:20. The half Torah portion is Hosea 2:1 through 22. But we're going to start our reading in Matthew 19:20 through 22. And it reads, when we're talking about the statement I just made about how going through these Torah portions does not make one perfect, but the practice of it gives us discernment. This is why I'm reading this story here, Matthew 19:20 through 22. The young man said to him, talking about Yahweh Shua, all these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack? Yahweh Shua just told him he just told Yahweh Shua how he keeps the commandments and all that. Then Yahweh Shua said to him, if you want to be perfect, so he's talking about being perfect now. You want to be perfect now, you ain't going to get that by keeping all the commandments. He said, if you want to be perfect, go and sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come follow me. What was the response? The young man heard that saying. He went away sorrowful because he had great possessions. There you go. Isn't that humbling? So you see that we're not reading these first 5 books of Moshe so we can be perfect. If you want to be perfect, you are going to be one who gives his whole heart and life and time to Yahweh Shua. That means you ain't going to be married. You ain't going, because you ain't have time for marriage and children, and you ain't going to be working. You're going to be just like Yahweh Shua, which with his whole life, his last 3.5 years was dedicated to his father's work. And he was homeless, living on the Mount of Olives at the tree where he was going to sacrifice himself, at that almond tree. So being perfect is doing the perfect will of Yahweh, and is not what we're doing here now, how we get up tomorrow morning, be going to work, and going through the routines of this beastly system that we're in. So I'm going to try to help bring us through these 12 portions. This is Remnant Radio, because only remnant of people listen to this thing. Only remnant people are buying the books, going to the YouTube channel and listening to these things about these 12 portions, because they don't care. They want the latest, like a dog following the shiniest thing that comes past his nose, instead of getting to the nit and grit of the foundation and the structure and the bones of the one you say you love. And that's what we should be doing. And you're not going to understand the other things we're going to talk about when we finish these 12 portions in Daniel and Revelations and all the other things we're going to be talking about, unless you first understand, or at least get an exposure to these 5 books. The channel is open to get all the things you did not get, and it's downloaded today, and then 5 days later I have an upgraded version downloaded where you have these scriptures listed out and the words and other important things. So because we are slow in understanding, we talked last week about how we still didn't quite get it, about how to have a proper relationship with Yahweh. 40 years after his son resurrected and rose and left, he had to burn down the temple. Once he burned that down, that scattered us, and we individually became the Mishkan. Individually. And then we talked about the 7 Zaharim, the warnings that Yahweh gave us. These 7 Zaharim, if you go looking at Ezekiel 4:4-6, talking about how he laid on his left side for 390 days and on the right 40 days, that brings us to 721 BC, the prophecy of our exile to Babylon. Connecting that with the Ezekiel prophecy in Ezekiel 4, we find that 390 times 7 gives you 2009. And that is the year of the Hebrew explosion, around that time. Most of you out there who are following me have at max 12 years of awareness, Hebrew awareness. Some of you are a little more experienced. You may go back to year 2000, when we got the internet and laptops. You had your home computers. But most of you come around 2009, when the explosion of the Hebrew movement comes with the explosion of the iPhone. And most of you out there are thumb scholars. You're not real scholars. You do not get into you won't spend $500 for a book and study. Actually take time to study. Fast and pray. Leave the wife alone every now and then. Turn the plate down every now and then and study. Most of our people out there who are got their Hebrew awareness, getting it through their iPhone. And it's right here in the Bible, it predicts it. 2009. And then we talked last week about how the Kodesh land, Haaretz, was to remain desolate until Yahweh brought us back. Lo and behold, if you look over at Yisrael right now, doesn't look desolate to me. Does not look desolate to me. It is thriving and doing well. So then, is it real? Think about that. Also, we talked about how Yahweh Shua is our Goel. That's Hebrew number 1350. That means he's a kinsman. He is coming to get those who are genetically related to him. He is the son of man, the second Adam, the second Adam. Adam was a man made upright after the image of Yahweh. So nothing that's not Adam is getting into the kingdom. Leviticus 27:29 talks about how no condemned soul is redeemable. Yet What did our leaders do in Israel? They liberated, they redeemed Barabbas. That's what our Edomite leaders did. And we know, if you go back to the last week's Torah portion, that our leaders were not Hebrews. There were some in there every now and then, but we were being ruled by our big brother, Esau. So let's look at these Torah portions, please. I implore you, and get the deeper meaning, connect them to how important they are for us to this day. So you want to understand the so-called New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, you're going to have to know these 5 books. And if you're a firstborn male, all preachers and priests and whatever you call yourselves to be, you're supposed to be writing the Torah down with your own hand. That's what the king was told to do, and all firstborn males. In chapter 1, verse 1, we see that it begins on the first day of the 2nd month. And remember, our new beginning was the month of Abib. That was our new beginning. And Yahweh says, take a head count. Shi'eu at Rosh. That means lift up the head. And immediately when I see this, lift up the head, I think about Caiaphas. Now, the narrative of Caiaphas and Yahweh's meeting of him, you can find it in Matthew, Mark, and John. But I'm going to read the narrative from Matthew 26:62. Because as soon as I read that, that's the first thing I thought about. Yahweh comes in after they got him from the Garden of Gethsemane and brought him in for immediate, speedy trial. After they beat him up and everything, he comes in with his head down, with those beautiful long black locks of his covering his face. So Caiaphas lifts up his head. And let's just read chapter 26 and 62. 26 and 62. And it reads, and the high priest arose and said to him, do you answer nothing? What is it these men testify against you? So Yahweh's head is lifted up. He is counted. He is lifted up to give an account to Yahweh of who he is and his position and his name. Matthew 27:46, the very next chapter, 27:46. And the other time that his head is lifted up is when he says, and about the 9th hour, Yahweh cried out with a loud voice, saying, Azabtani, Yektiyahu, Eliyahu Shali, Eliyahu Shali, Lama. He did not speak those Greek words you see in your KJV. He lifted up his head and he cried this out. You can find this in all 4 narratives of the so-called Gospels. And that's the second time we find where Yahweh lifts up his head. So when you're reading these Torah portions and when he says this, lift up his head, think about your Savior, who also had to be counted at Golgotha, the place of the skull. And then we were numbered according to our families. Now remember, previously we were counted as a nation. And as a nation, it is us in the aspects of us as in the female end. But when we count as a nation, it is more general. But here we find in Bemidbar, Numbers 1, we are counted separate by tribe. Are you getting it? Do you see the difference now? Yahweh is dividing us now. He is dividing us by tribe. See, here we failed as a nation. Remember, we sinned with the golden ox before he got down. So as a nation, we failed. Now he's going to divide us by nation, and then we failed him. Then he's going to divide us by tribe. We failed him by tribe. Once again, why? Because we let the Arab Rav get into our tribes, get into our camps. To this day, all this explosion of the Hebrew movement, probably 98%, I don't know what the percentage is high, have Arab Rav planted within your camps. Depending on how successful your camp is or how big it is, you have Edomites who are sabotaging your camps. Every last one of just about, they're in there, because where Yahweh's people are, where the wheat is, the tares want to be. They are planted right there. The enemy plants the tares with the wheat. He's not going to be separate by himself because nobody's going to go in and go to a whole field of tares to glean them and eat. They want to eat from the wheat. So the tare is not going to be separate by itself. Nobody's going to go to a field of tares to feed their family. You're going to go to the field of wheat. And in our camps, the reason why we're not getting along, because we have the Erev Rav in our camps set up. And we failed as tribes. Then now Yahweh says to lift up the head. That we're going to count each individual person is to be accounted for their walk with him. That's how important this is. These Torah portions is teaching us that, but we're not getting it. We're going to be, Shaul says, we are to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. We are going to be individually responsible for this. I'm trying to teach now. You're individually responsible for turning this from religion to relationship, to having a relationship with the Most High that you said you love. Yet we're spending more time doing other things and concerned about what's going on in the world today, which doesn't matter. What matters is where you are in this world today, where you are in respects to your relationship with Yahweh Shua in this world today, not what's going on. We see that we are counted according to the household of our fathers, the males 20 and up. When you have the tribal count, then you talk about a patrilineal count. As a nation, it's a matrilineal count. Because at the end, when we're presented to Yahweh Shua as the bride, we are a nation. So we are the bride. It's a matrilineal thing. It's only patrilineal when it's by tribe. Now, right now, we're none of that. And a lot of us are not getting along because we're in different tribes. You see that Yahweh separated us by tribes. We're not even supposed to be mixing. We know we're not supposed to be mixing with the Goyim. But we're not supposed to be mixing as tribes. And many of us are marrying outside of our tribes. We work with people who are not in our tribes. And we worship with people who are not in our tribes. And we're not getting along on top of having Erev Rav in our tribes. This is deep. Together as a nation, we are the bride for the groom of Yahweh. Then he says names. Names were given by inspiration because they give a unique character to the soul, because the Hebrew name tells a story of Yahweh. If you look at all this, you can actually tell what's going on in the history of the revelation of Yahweh's mind to us by reading the names of key players throughout the history. Just reading their names and what they mean. When they count all these souls, according to their head count, you see there's a story just in those names. I'm not going to really have time to go into it because I'll always run out of time. But those names alone mean something. The first name listed was Eliezer, and Eliezer's name means Elohim is protector. The last name listed is Enon, and it means I. You think that's random? Elohim protects his covenant peoples as the pupil of his eye. So when he counted them all, he's letting them know that by their names. When we go to the third verse, we see the word Sebaal. Yahweh is calling us out the ages from 20 to 60 as his army. This is spiritual warfare they're about to be engaged in. He's not counting them just because he wants to see how many they are to beat his chest. No, all the seeds belong to him. All souls are his. He is seeing what he's got, want them to know what they got for war. This is not a war just for dirt. It's a spiritual warfare. But of course, we weren't getting it back then. I hope you get it now. Now that you're an individual Mishkan, you're an individual, you're not a tribe, you're definitely not a nation, that you are in spiritual warfare. And you need to be prepared and girded up. And you got to be girded up with the structural foundation of the word of Yahweh, which we're giving you now in these 54 Torah portions. And we only got one more book left after this book. And then we're going to go into that fun stuff you like, but it's going to be way over your head if you're not following me now. In verse 16, you see that these tribal leaders are part of the count, and it begins on the first day of Zif, which is April, May, around that time, and they are strict with the genealogy because remember, our Redeemer, our Goel is Yahweh Shua, and He is mindful of the seed. He's only getting those who are genetically connected to Him. Man, not mankind, only man. I'm going to give you a shocker today. Keep listening. I'm going to give you a shocker today. But there is no mixing in Israel, even for the camps. And ideally, there's not supposed to be any mixing at all. Now we find out in verses 48 to 54, the Levites are the ones that proved to be loyal during that golden ram incident. So they replaced the firstborn males as Yahweh's representatives for the Mishkan. They encircled the Mishkan and by their groups. The tribes encircled outside of them by their groups. They had their flag, their standard, and their colors. This is a beautiful thing. To be able to see this, and we're going to talk about that in the next few Torah portions, but how Israel it was just beautiful how they set up by their standards and their colors and by their orders. And this shows how prophetic, how great of a prophet Jacob was when he made the coat, the tunic of many colors. This was a prophetic thing he did. It wasn't just about propping up Yusuf. It was about the meaning of his genes and what was going to happen to us to this day. How we are separated by these nations and by these colors. Which also talks about Yahweh Shua, who I believe wore that tunic. Reuben had the red flag and the insignia of the flowers for his mother. Simeon had the green flag with the embroidered insignia of Shechem. Remember, he was one of those who killed the Shechemites. Levi had the white, black, and red flag with the Urim and the Thummim insignia. Judah with the sky blue flag and the lion insignia. Everybody knows that, and everybody claims to be Judah. You're not. Or it's very rare for them to be Judah. We talk about where they was placed around the Mishkan is where they were scattered. And Judah was east. And his three. Then you have Issachar, which is blue, black flag for the sun, moon, insignia. Remember, Issachar was the specialist in reading the sun, moon, and the stars for the Moedim. So that's why he had that. Zebulon with the white flag and the ship insignia. And all these mean something, by the way, because we know Zebulon went out by ship. So, you know what? Most of us may be from Zebulon. Dan is a sapphire flag with a snake insignia. Now, we know the Danites were north, and they're two tribes, Dan, Gad, and Naphtali. And so and it means hidden. And when they were going to the north. So a lot of our brothers that we don't think are our brothers come through Dan. And the two tribes that went with Dan went up north. And they had the lesser melon-toned skin. So God, which we say Gad, but it's really God, had the gray flag and the battalion of the soldiers insignia. Naphtali with the pale red flag with the deer insignia. Asher, flaming olive oil flag with the olive tree insignia. Ephraim, jet black flag with the ox insignia. Remember, we're Ephraim, jet black flag and the ox insignia. There's a whole lesson can be given just in these. They're listed for a reason. And it's not a boring thing for someone who loves Yahweh, who wants to understand Him and get to know Him better. Every tribe and their flag and their color and their insignia has a meaning. So Ephraim was a jet black flag with the ox insignia. Manasseh was a jet black flag with the oryx, which is a wild ox insignia. And Benjamin was the mixed color flag with the wolf insignia. Man, this is beautiful. I wish I had time to even go into that alone. But on the banners of the four formations were the segments of the letters of the names of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So when they all camped together, the names of their forefathers was spelled out. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I think it's Psalm 133 that says how beautiful it is when the Hebrew brothers come together. And isn't that a rare thing? It's hard to get two brothers together. in unity on the word of Yah. And it's depressing to even think about that. It really is. It's hard to even get a couple of brothers or a couple of sisters together and that loves Yahweh. That loves Yahweh. This is not boring to open the book of Yahweh on a Sunday morning and talk about him and what he means to us intimately. And that's why I know this is not, it's going to get popular though when we start talking, when y'all see these things we're going to read about in Daniel, Revelations, and all that stuff. But you're going to be missing out if you're not following today. Judah was Issachar and Zebulun, and this is the progenitor of the Davidic monarchy with the lion, and they were sitting east to the rising sun. So we are not east, we're west and north. So most of Yehuda and Issachar and Zebulun are to the east of parts of the world. They're not over here. Reuben had Gad and Simeon, and they camped second. They were in the south. And they represent being penitent to Yah's mercy on Yisrael. Because we know what Reuben did with his father's bed. So south, you get Reuben, Gad, and Simeon. Then you have the tent of meeting was centrally centered around the tribes. And then to the north, you have Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. So that's us, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then Benjamin, I don't know why Benjamin is up there. I got to do some more research on that. Because a lot of times he is connected with Yehuda. But the majority of Benjamin and Manasseh are west, the source of extreme weather, and we are possessed with the strength to tolerate all kinds of elements. And that's what most of us are. Now, of course, all 13 tribes, counting the patriarch tribe, counting the Levites, but all 13 tribes are all over the entire world, salting the earth. But the concentration of them are as been outlined right here in the Torah. Judah east, Reuben south, Ephraim west, and Dan north, which this area is called, and Dan came Asher and Naphtali. So Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, these are probably a lot of our more fair-complected brothers and sisters. Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, the ones who have more the fairer skins, based on where they went. Say north, situated means darkness or hidden. So that's where they went. That's what they mean. But it's deeper than that. Now let's go to the 3rd chapter, verse 1. And here Yahweh designates Aaron and his sons as a Kohanim. So they are the Levites. Aaron's sons are named, and Moses' sons are assumed here. But they get listed in verse 27. Now we know that Phinehas is the grandson, but he was grafted in because of his courage against the sexual immorality we saw at the mountain. Eleazar and Ithamar replaced Nadab and Abihu. If we didn't learn anything from that lesson, we need to realize that Yahweh is serious in what he says. Yahweh is Kodesh, and he said that over and over and over again. Thus, we must be Kodesh. We must not approach Yahweh in an un-Kodesh manner. We must be meek and humble and clean when we approach Yahweh. When you go to your private place, your mikdosh, your private, intimate place, have your heart, mind, and soul ready. Do not be thinking about something else. Do not be dirty. Have the proper attire on. You don't need to have something on representing Nike or some kind of drink or Coca-Cola. Put on something nice. Try to have on all clothes, one kind of clothing of linen or cotton or wool. And approach Yahweh. Most of the times, it's nice if you have an empty stomach. You don't want to be coming to him after you ate a whole huge meal. Definitely don't come before him drunk. You see what happened to Nadab and Abihu. They probably was drinking. And these were men who were definitely anointed and taught by the lawgiver himself. We don't even come close to approaching that. How should we approach Yahweh? Should our minds be laden and burdened down with the cares of this world when we approach him? We need to realize that we are approaching the Most High Yah, who's coming back again to those who love Him and who are seeking His face. Not seeking what's going on with the Dow Jones or seeking who's the next person they can sleep with, worrying about this and that and what's going on currently, and all these slogans are a waste of time. And all this activism is a waste of time. The greatest way you can be an activist is to be a righteous man to your wife and your children. And the gifts that Yahweh give you to apply it towards salting and lighting the earth of the Besor message. Let's read chapter 3, verse 10 of Bemidbar. Let's read that verse. So you will appoint Aaron and his sons, and they will attend to their priesthood, but the outsider who comes near will be put to death. The outsider. Now, why do I want to read that? See, remember, I just talked about Nadab and Abihu. Yahweh says something, He means it. His words created all that there is. So Yahweh didn't stutter. If He stuttered, what will come out of that? What kind of creation will come out of that? If He stammered, what kind of creation will come out of that? I mean, that will be, you couldn't trust Him. If His words, if He says something, He didn't mean it. What will come out of His mouth is creation. And He says no outsider is to approach Him. Now, let's look at John 11, 47 and 48. John 11, 47 and 48. And it reads, Then the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, What will we do? Because this man works many signs. And if we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. Isn't that interesting? Remember, they're going to take away their place and nation. That means whoever is talking here was given their position by the Romans. Now, I'm telling you this. Now, remember, this is not Hebrews talking. These are Judaizers. These are not Yahweh's people. Romans did not place Yahweh's people over Yahweh's people. They placed Yahweh's enemy over Yahweh's people. Their perpetual enemy, which is Esau. Remember, they said to Yahweh, we are Abraham's seed, but we have never been in bondage. Truth and truth. Esau is a Shemite, and he was never in bondage. So they spoke the truth. They said straight up who they were. We are Abraham's seed, true, and we have never been in bondage. They was not as a nation in Misraim. You was in Misraim. So what happened? We violated chapter 3, verse 10, where it always says, no outsider is supposed to serve him in his temple. What do we have in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament? Outsiders serving in a temple and ruling over us. We know that Herod was in place when Yahweh was born. This is why he sought to kill the baby Messiah. Because they wanted all they cared about was keeping their position, keeping their thumb over us, staying close to Yisrael, but being rulers over Yisrael. Herod was born in southern Palestine. I'm getting this from the Britannica. You can look up Britannica. Herod, born in southern Palestine, was a son of Antipater, an Edomite, whom Julius Caesar later appointed procurator of Judea. Herod's mother was a daughter of a noble from Petra. Petra is the capital of the Edomites. This is the center of a rising Nebatean polity, who ruled over Israel during the time of Yahweh Shua was the Edomites. Directly against this word right here in chapter 3, verse 10 of Numbers, it says no outsider is supposed to serve in Yahweh's Mishkan and serve over his people. In Mark 3 and 6, we find that these Pharisees plotted with the Herodians against Yahweh Shua. In Mark 12:13, the Pharisees and Herodians tried to catch him in his words. The Sadducees are the ones who controlled the temple. They were very rich and conservative, and they were backed by Rome. All of these parties and factions were backed by Rome. Possibly, well, I don't think the Essens were, because Yacahonan the Baptist was an Essen. But we see that our leaders, the Sanhedrin, remember they had the council of 70 elders, and most of the Sanhedrin were Pharisees. Most of them were Pharisees. Caiaphas was a Sanhedrin. He was the chief of the Sanhedrin, and he's the one that lifted up Yahweh's head to answer to him. Caiaphas. The scribes were the legal arm of the Edomites and call themselves telling us how to keep the law. So they told us how to keep the law. The scribes did all the legal draft, all the legal documents. And we know that Shaul was a Pharisee. So we know that you did have, remember, Yehudas Iscariot was a priest. He wasn't a high priest. So you did have Hebrews here and there who were in the leadership. But those appointed, those in charge from the king on down, were put there by Rome. Today, the Pharisees are the rabbinate. The rabbinate that's in place today are Pharisees. See, Judaism is not a genetic group. It is a religion. And what I'm trying to teach here to you is going from religion to relationship. Judaism is all about religion and legalism. It's not about relationship and connecting to the Hamashiach, who's coming to return to receive those who love him and keep his commandments. What did he tell that rich young ruler? Sell everything you have and come to me. He didn't say keep 613. He said he kept the 10 commandments. They hang on to love me and love you, your man, as yourself. But you want to do more than that? Then sell everything and donate your whole time. Be a burnt sacrifice. Matthew 23:13. Matthew 23:13 and 15. 23:13 and 15. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, because you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel the land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much as a son of hell as yourselves. So all these rulers of Israel, the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, Yahweh, 8 times, if you read the whole narrative, he says, woe to them. Woe. Woe to you who love religion and not relationship. Woe to you who are not trying to get in with the works of your hands instead of the love of your heart. Woe. 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 8 times he said it. Going down to verse 11, you see the Levites, they replaced the firstborn because of their faithfulness in the golden ox accident. But originally, Yahweh meant, I'm a firstborn male. We were supposed to be the ones to teach this thing, as I'm doing now, when we were a nation. Let's go to Exodus 24:5. Exodus 24:5. Where is that? Oh yeah, it's close to the front of the book. Wow. Exodus 24:5. It reads, Then he sent young men of the children of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to Yahweh. See, this is the order of worship before the building of the tabernacle. This is before the building of the Mishkan. The young men, the firstborn males, did the sacrifices. And we lost that position at the golden ox incident. But that's not what the original was. It's going to go back to that. And it's actually back to that right now, as we are no longer a nation. So we find in verse 15, the Levites are counted twice, from 1 month onward, because that's their spiritual role. And again from 30 to 50 because of their physical role. The physicality alone of being a priest is awesome. It is a difficult job physically. This is why Yahweh, remember we talked about how Yahweh don't like ugly. He don't like anybody misshapen and not and he it was, you know, some people may have got offended, but Yahweh's priests were good-looking, healthy, strong men. Everyone. No one had any kind of deformities or blemishes or marks. No one was feeble among them. The physicality of the job was immense. So the tenure was short, 30 to 50. But as being set apart for Yahweh, it was from 1 month to the grave, cradle to grave, they served Yahweh. But as the physical part of the job with the sacrifices, only 30 to 50. So we see now the assignment of the 3 Levite families, the Kohathites, they positioned themselves west. Remember, they had the inner circle, you had the Mishkan, which is, remember, a circle, a dome, which you learned that right here. The Mishkan was not a rectangle. It was a circle, a dome. And then you had around that the Kohathites to the west, the Gershonites to the south, and the Merarites to the north. At the east was Moshe and the Kohanim. So they were positioned east. All this means something. This is, if it's in the book, you need to figure out why it's there. It's not for no reason. Now, I'm going to do a jaw dropper for you. See, in verse 41, it talks about how not only is the first male is to be redeemed, but also, you know, the animals have to be redeemed. So among the animals, only, well, they were not redeemed separately like the people, like the souls, and not counted as such. But the only one that had to be redeemed was the donkey. And that's interesting. Yahweh says, amongst the animals, only the donkey must be redeemed. They are to be redeemed by non-sanctified sheep that are given as a gift to the Kohen. And you say, wow, now how does that matter? What is that? There's a deep meaning to that. Remember, if in Leviticus, if the person did not want to redeem their donkey, they had to break his neck. And why would somebody break the neck of their donkey just to save the sheep that had to be redeemed for the donkey? You would rather just go and give up whatever sheep you had to give up and keep your donkey because of the immense work and benefit you get from using the donkey. So if you didn't redeem it, you had to break his neck. So you had to kill it. So most people probably just went on and redeemed the donkey. Now, how does this matter? Remember, we talked about how Esau mixed his seed with everything. And with animals, the first he mixed his seed was with the donkey. And you think that was just random? Go back to the priest's Torah portions and find where I talked about that. Because he mixed his seed with the donkey, and it was not for no reason. He is trying to be redeemed to get his seed in with your seed. And if Yahweh mentions something, it's for a reason. It is your job to figure out why in the world would he do this? Why do you have to redeem a donkey? And if you don't, you break his neck. I suggest you break his neck. In verse 47, here's another deep one. I'm going to still have to study some more on this. There were 273 firstborn males who would not be able to be redeemed by the Levites, because when they did the count, there wasn't enough Levites to cover all of the firstborn males of Israel. There was 273 souls more than the Levites. So they were paid for with 5 temple shekels. 5 temple shekels. Again, this could be a whole lesson by itself. But remember, Yosef was sold by his brothers for 20 dinar. 20 dinar equals 5 shekels. So that amount, by the time in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament time era, when Yahweh Shua was here, the temple shekel was inflated. Okay, it was 20 gerahs of pure silver shekel. By the time Yahweh Shua came on, it increased to 24 gerahs. So it went from 20 to 24. Now, how does that matter? Remember, Yahweh Shua was sold for 30 pieces of temple shekels. So the 30 pieces of temple shekels is really an inflated form of the 20 from Moshe's time. So there you go, the connection. Remember, all of this connects to Yahweh Shua in some kind of way. All of it. And it's your job to figure out why, because you have a relationship with him. You love him, and you want to get to know him as much as you can. We got a lot more deep stuff coming in here that I'm probably not going to have time for. But in chapter 4, this is the last chapter, and verse 2, we see how the Kohathites are organized and how they are charged with the most sacred portions of the Mishkan. They had to raise up the head and be counted. Yahweh takes seriously this job. You're not going to just grab his sacred items any kind of way. And these are the Kohanim, who the Kohathites, aged 30 to 50, had to do all this work. The Kohath was Levi's second son. And you wonder, how is Kohath given this the highest of the duties when he was the second son? Well, out of the genes of Kohath came Moshe and Aaron. So that elevated his seed in its greatness. But it's not unusual. Again, how does this connect to Yahweh Shua? Using Kohath, the second son, for the most precious the handling of Yahweh's Mishkan. How does that matter connect to Yahweh Shua? Well, remember, throughout the Torah, there's a history of the second son superseding the first son. From the very beginning, Abel was chosen over Cain. How about Yishak over Ishmael? How about Jacob over Esau? And again, we had Kohath. Moses was chosen over Aaron. Moses was the second son. Aaron was his big brother. And King David, where was he? Number 12 or 10? He was way down the line. And of course, the greatest example of all is Yahweh Shua, the second Adam. Adam gave up his radah, his authority, to Hasatan of the earth. Yahweh Shua, the second Adam, came to get it back. He did not accept the offerings of this world. He sold everything he had and followed his father. Everything he had, he gave up. Up in Hashemayim, came onto this earth, not highly esteemed, not regarded at all. He gave up all and received the authority of Yahweh over the earth. To this day, he has given to you. Out of your mouth, for your mouth, you speak with authority, Yahweh Shua. You teach the Besorah of Yahweh Shua. He is a T-ball. He is the ark. There is no other way. Everything else is a waste of time. Walk the earth, the breadth of it and the width of it, in authority and power of the unleavened name of Yahweh Shua HaMashiach. Take back what was given back to you, this authority and power that Adam gave up. When you went from the blood covenant to the water covenant. The blood covenant of the 613 to the water covenant of the 2. Loving Yahweh with all your heart, might, and soul, and loving your neighbor as yourself. That is the authority you have to kibosh, to control, to dominate everything. In verse 4, the Kohathites was charged with the Kodesh things. The Kohanim prepared and wrapped the items for the Levites, and they covered the items with the veil. Then they covered the veil. In verse 6, there's a unique word here that's going to take more time to study. It's going to take, and actually I don't have my head wrapped around it at this time to even teach it, but they use this word takash, skins. And there's a lot of talk about this covering, this takash. Now, it was a multicolored, one-horned animal that now seems to be extinct. That's one line. I'm not leaning towards that one. The Jerusalem Bible translates Orat Takashim as referring to a very fine dyed sheep or goat leather, which means that it's fine leather. The Jewish Publication Society renders it dolphin or sea cow. But that's an unclean animal. And then some people think it was the giraffe, which is an unclean animal. The KJV says it was a badger. That's again an unclean animal. So I don't think it's any of these things. But the LXX might be the closest. They say that Takash is a hyacinth skins. So really they're saying it's a type of dye. Now they do use this word to go along with the seats and the other colors coverings, but it might be just some kind of special dye, which we cannot get right now. You know, our ZC is supposed to have this special color, one strand of blue, which is like the remember, Moshe said he calls heaven and earth as witnesses. This blue is the color of heaven, Hashmayim, and the sea. This special kind of blue, this special kind of dye. So I'm leaning towards that right now. And there's also that color supposed to be on our seats. But this word is still a special word that needs to be looked up. In Genesis 22:44, Nahor's son, that he had through a concubine named Rumah, his name was Takash. So I'm looking at that, and then also in Ezekiel 16:10, when Yahweh takes us and out of the saves us from the desert. We were dying in the desert in our blood. He cleaned us up and washed us up and clothed us, and he put sandals on our feet. Those sandals were takash. So they were special high-end sandals. This is like you will get from wherever bougie store you can think of. He gave us high-end sandals on our feet, takash sandals. So this word is a special word. This takash, tachelet, takashim. It's a special word. It's a special color, or various divers of colors that was over the Mishkan and over the emblems of the most holy things. So this is something to be looked at. Something I'm going to have to study some more. It's on my list. It's on my menu to study more, so I can give you some more education on this. But it means something. It's very important. And we do know that in the latter days, they're going to build another temple. They're going to build another temple, and it's going to have the ruddy heifer. It's going to have these special. It's going to have the Ark of the Covenant, because we know it's still there. Nothing is gone. Everything still exists. They're going to have this Takash color, and they're going to have the real Mishkan shaped like a dome. It's not going to be like the one. That's why they distract us the last 2,000 years of what it looked like, with this rectangle and these skins draped over the most holy place, which is a joke. They're going to have the Mishkan properly shaped like a dome, and it's going to be used to deceive those who are not understanding what I'm trying to put forth here now. To go from religion to relationship, to go from blood to water. Learn the 613. Learn them. Learn your Savior, so you can learn how He individually wants you to love Him and serve Him and be fruitful for Him. This Takash thing is deep. Again, it goes to the wisdom of Yaakov with his multicolored tunic. I'm sure he used these dyes or this special animal to make this tunic, which again ended up on the body of Yahweh Shua down the line. And on top of this Takash covering was the sky blue, which is the colors of heaven and the sea. And then we see the table of showbread, the utensils, and then you have the menorah, then you have the golden altar, then you have the outer altar. All these things in its order. Yahweh is all about organization and order. And every man had a specific job to do. They were not bumping into each other, bumbling about. You see when people, you get professional movers for your house, they come in with the tools ready to carry the furniture in and out, not to damage their furniture, not to damage their house, not to break the dishes. They are professionals, the way they handle it, and it's very expensive to get professional movers to move someone from one house to another. They copy the organization of Yahweh. Yahweh is all about organization and coordination and cohesiveness. He is not a man out of order. So each man was coordinated to his task, and the Levites could not gaze at or touch the items uncovered. So I'm hoping that we take these things, that we understand what I'm trying to do here on Yahweh for Christians. This is Yehonathan God. We here on WFDR 1590 of teaching these Torah portions is for the sake of going from religion to relationship. We are in the latter days at this very time, and we do know that the deceiver has to look exactly like the real thing. He's not going to be something different. Remember when they say oh, Master, didn't we do these things in your name and all this stuff? This means they were Hebrews. We already know that Christianity and Islam and all the other religions and in Judaism, they don't use the name of Yahweh. So the delineation, the separation is not Hebrews from other religions. That's what people are getting this mixed up. I'm hoping you listen. The separation is not going to be Hebrews against all the other religions. It's going to be Hebrews against Hebrews. That's where the discernment comes in. That's where the understanding, that's where the wisdom, the Hakmah comes in. That's where it takes into relationship with Yahweh Shua to see the parsing of the wheat and the tares. Everybody knows that Hare Krishna and the Pope and Catholicism and any Mithraism, all that stuff, we already know that's wrong. That's why the world's going to destroy all those religions. We're going to get that's right there in Revelations. The world is going to turn against the false religions. What you're going to have is trying to delineate between Jacob and Esau and Jacob, because Esau grew up in the same house as Jacob, and he knew the Torah just as well as he did. So he knows what he has to. He's trying to get in where he does not fit in. He's trying to get in every way, genetically, trying to get in. That's why he mixes. That's why Yahweh was so strong about not mixing. So strong was he against mixing, he was even against mixing of the tribes. Because Yahweh knows what's going to happen. He knows what the accuser's plan is. He knows the accuser's trying to get into the kingdom. That's why Yahweh says, hey, one thing that can make it easy for you is to not mix. It don't matter whether it's animals on your farm or clothes on your back or even brother to brother. Don't mix. Don't mix. That will make it easier for you. He already knows who's his and who's not. Our Goel is a genetic redeemer. He's only receiving those like Shlomo said. Yahweh made man upright, but they have desired many schemes. That's a deep verse. It's deep where he's talking about the difference between man and mankind. That's exactly, if you read it in Hebrew, he's talking about the difference between man and mankind. And it takes this divine, if I can use, I'll use that Latin word, discernment to deviate between the two. It's not going to be those who worship on Saturday and those who worship on Sunday. It's not going to be black and white. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be people looking alike, talking seemingly alike, and worshiping seemingly alike. This thing is going to be so deep that even the most elect could be deceived. And it's going to boil down to this 613. From blood to water. Those who understand it, how it goes from blood to water, or those who stuck in the blood. Don't get stuck in blood. Yahweh used the blood covenant as a stet to hold off your crimes, to cover. He didn't mean to have us eternally with him, with his hand over us, covering us. He desires to be intimate with us, have a relationship with him. That's water. We will be to be washed and propitiated, cleaned. Next we to a portion number 35, naso, which means take a census. Take a, or means lift up. That's going to be in Numbers 421 through Numbers 789. So get your homework in. Numbers 421 through Numbers 789. Yehonasan Dawi, Shalom Aleichem, peace be on you. You like the little thing? Look at you, look at you, girl. Oh, they're diddy bopping.